today we're going to talk about destroying your ex. And this topic for me is, kind of born out
Or
of...
how to make a Molotov cocktail.
That too. We're not going quite that far. The idea of this concept is, I've had people that have been involved in other groups. We have our little dog with us, so if you see her jumping into the frame,
She's the best dog in the whole world.
Yeah, she's quiet because I took her collar off, but if you're watching us on video, you might still see her. So she's always with us wherever we are. She's pretty old, so we don't leave her. Anyway, the topic of destroying your ex for me, so many times I see people that have come from other coaches or maybe other groups that they've worked with or whatever, and the focus just gets so heavy on how to take your ex down.
Yes.
Right. How to beat them in court, how to do your documentation, how to stop them, how to, everything becomes them.
Right.
And so when I start working with people, one of the things we try to take the focus off of is
them.
Is them. Because isn't that why you're getting a divorce?
Yes.
When people get in this mode where they're totally focused on the other person and what they're doing, it's like Thomas said, it's like the flip side of the love, only it's in hate, but it's still totally focused on the other person.
Right. In both cases, you care what happens to that person.
Right. And either in the negative or the positive, right? You're caring one way or another. And so when we start working with especially like you said, with narcissists, they're trying to keep, or many other personality disorders. There's a lot of different high conflict personality disorders that, both show up in male and female. It's just, narcissistic is the one that I tend to work with the most closely. So that's kind of where most of my stories relate from. But, borderline personality disorder, sometimes people that are struggling with bipolar, whatever, a lot of times their, sort of even unconscious goal is to keep the attention focused on them.
Right.
And so what happens is, you get into this cycle with the other person where even though you're divorced, and especially if you have kids, you're still focusing all of your moves every day around what you're thinking they're going to do or what you're second guessing.
Yep.
All the time that they're going to do. When that becomes the whole focus of what you're doing, then you're staying stuck in this cycle with this other person. And so really our goal is to get this person out of our life.
Right. Agreed.
And you can't do that by being hyper-focused on them all the time.
Right.
To me, what our goal really is, and my goal with my coaching clients is, how do we get this person sort of pushed out to the edge of our life, so to speak? And for me, it's like, you want your home, your world, your time with your kids to be your sanctuary,
right,
to be anxiety free, to have peace. I don't want to be sitting in that world contemplating what my ex-husband's doing.
Right. Ideally, we want to have happiness.
Right. And so the best way to do that is to, you're never going to be able to totally, obviously, rid yourself of him, at least till your children are a little older. But, mine still rears his ugly head once in a while, and my children are, well into their 20s. So you're never going to completely eliminate them. But what I find when I first have a coaching client is usually that they're racked with anxiety and stress, and they're constantly wondering, why is he doing this? I get asked a lot, why is the other person doing this?
Yes.
What's their goal? What's their game? What's their angle?
Right.
I get asked that a lot.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're trying to manipulate you.
Right.
Right. And
right.
To which they would say, yeah, he's trying to manipulate me.
Right.
But how?
Right. And I'll tell you how. By getting you to be consumed with what he's doing.
Right.
Or she, either way, whether this is, there are female narcissistic, people too. So this is not just a male only trait, but, but they spend a lot of energy trying to, trying to figure out what the other person's going to do and
Right.
counter it. My goal in working with clients is not to help them destroy the other person. That's not our goal. Our goal is to not care what the other person's doing.
Yes.
Because they'll destroy themselves.
To become indifferent.
That's right.
Right.
Because if the other person is dysfunctional enough, they'll take care of the destruction all on their own.
But here, the problem is that he's majored in pushing your buttons.
Or
So
she, yeah.
he or she, yes.
But there's a big difference between wanting to preserve your own self and to have peace and happiness and wanting to just take the other person down.
Right.
And I think sometimes when we get hyper-focused on the negative things and the documentation and what do I do in court and what do I say in court and and everything becomes about them, then it becomes, like I said, about just taking them down, and that's your only goal. But we need to flip that and start saying, how do I achieve peace in my world?
Right.
And whatever that other person's doing, I don't care.
Yes.
I'm just going to let them do what they're doing, because if they're totally screwed up or they don't care about the kids or their goal is only money or whatever, trust me, those people always end up destroying themselves. Don't worry about what the other person's doing. What the other person's doing isn't what's going to determine your outcome, not in your life and not in the court. What you are doing is what's going to have the impact on that.
Right.
So, one of the things that we start doing in the communication is minimizing it.
Yes.
You and I frequently see responses that are paragraphs and paragraphs.
Right. And that, yes.
And that's a no-no.
Right. Right. Yeah. Try to be concise.
Right.
It's very important to be concise in all your writing, but especially, and the thing that you can really eliminate from the communication is statements about feelings, either
Right.
yours or the other person's.
Absolutely.
If you are trying to tell them how you feel or asking them how they feel, you can just cut that sentence or that paragraph right out of your communication.
Everything that you go to do, if you're a parent and you're in this situation with a high conflict person, the thing that you have to ask yourself is, what makes this smoothest for the child?
Mm-hmm.
And I have had people come back and say, well, the child doesn't really doesn't prefer the other parent's house. So by making the child stay there another day, that's going to be upsetting to them. Well, okay. But if you're arguing back and forth with the other parent and then that parent is like, well, spilling that negativity into the child or saying, well, I was going to have you stay, but the other parent won't let you or whatever, that starts putting the child in the middle between the two
Correct.
of you. And because there are people that do that will say things to the child or whatever and is happy to put them in the middle. I explain it like this, and if you're on the video, that's good. You're going to see a visual for my explanation. And I wish, if you're listening to the podcast, maybe you can go over to YouTube and I'll
use your imagination.
Yeah, make sure this makes the clip. I'll have to tell my son. But so here's what happens. Your kids are in this vice grip, okay? And you're one side, mom's one side, and dad's the other side. And there's this vice grip. And what happens is people think, oh, well, I got to do A, B, C, or D. Well, we're keeping the kids in the middle of that vice grip. And you can't do anything to loosen the other parent's pressure on the child.
Right.
There's nothing that you can do or control that's going to lessen the pressure of that half of the vice grip. So what do you have control over? Your half.
That's pretty good.
And so if you can do things that let go of stuff on your side, you're going to relieve pressure on your children.
Yeah, and they're going to thank you for it someday.
You have to be present. If you're being present and showing up, the kid's going to know that, and they're going to recognize it. One of the things my boys can tell you is pretty much every single high school basketball game that they had, I was there.
Right.
I might have missed one, over the years.
And if you're fixated on destroying her,
right,
then your attention is not on the kids.
That's right. And the same thing with the women when they're focused on destroying him, or they're having anxiety, they're totally absorbed with the anxiety and the stress and the concern about what he's doing and the manipulation and all this stuff. You're not focusing on your kids either. So I hope that's helpful. I mean, I want you to kind of have some perspective on, our goal isn't to annihilate the other person. Our goal is to rid our world of that person. And I think that's a very important distinction, because ridding your world of the other person involves focusing on you, focusing on your kids, focusing on your life, and not being reactive to the other person.
Right. And if they fall into a manhole and die, well, that's just good luck. I'm sorry.
Right. And focusing on destroying them only keeps you wrapped up in that negative cycle
Correct.
of the relationship. So, all right. So thanks for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you get more videos like this as they're released. If you're listening to the podcast on any of the Apple, what am I trying to say? My Apple.
Spotify,
iTunes. I think it's iTunes. It's not Apple. Anyway, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify.
Steve Jobs.
See, you're starting to learn where we're carried at too. Then don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the podcast so that you also get notified of new releases. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
We'll grow in number,